Hi everyone.
There
Good
she
to
is.
hello. Okay, so can I hear you? I think I can hear you too. Hi Anne.
Hi.
Hi, Darcie.
Hi Matthew. Hi Jim. Hi everyone.
Hello.
Okay, so this is like my first time using Zoom. So we've been practicing this afternoon. I promise you it's not going to be perfect. There's Matthew. It's so nice to see you all. A lot of you are having tea and things. Who has a hat?
That was me.
Who said me?
Anne did.
Okay, well, I'm having this today because I really need this today. So I'm gonna have one of these today, and add something to it. Oh, hello. Okay, so I think it's like 4 o'clock, so we're gonna get started right away. Thanks for joining me, everyone. There's a chat room there, and you can chat privately or you can chat to everyone, whatever you prefer to do if you have questions. If I'm on a roll, I might not answer the question right away. I might get to it at the end. So if I'm ignoring you, it's only because I get distracted easily. So yeah, it's great to be here. I look forward to these so much. You have no idea. This is like my social event for every 2 weeks, and so it's great to be here. So yeah, today we're going to talk about Nova Scotia, and we did cancel last week out of respect for Nova Scotia because of the tragic events that happened there. And today we are going to honor Nova Scotia. So if there's anyone on our call today that's from Nova Scotia, I'm probably not going to get all the facts exactly right, but if you've been on my presentations in the past, you know I'm a storyteller, so I'll tell you some of the things that I love about Nova Scotia, and hopefully you'll walk away today a little bit inspired and want to travel there yourselves, or perhaps maybe send your clients there, because we all know that as this starts to wind down, and it really does seem like it is winding down, hopefully, fingers crossed, that the first place that people are probably going to start traveling is going to be Canada. We know that. It's really interesting because there are so many agencies reaching out to me right now, which is super exciting, really exciting, because everyone's like having this realization that, okay, we've got to start becoming proactive. And there are a lot of travel agencies out there who are super proactive already. And they're asking me to do videos, not only for their staff, like to train the staff to get them prepared for selling Canada when the time comes, but also we're doing consumer, like virtual consumer events, and they're super fun. So basically it's the same thing as we're doing today, only we do it for consumers. We can do a recording, we can do it live. I think I've done about 5 of them now, and I have 9 more coming up. So if you're interested in doing something like that, please let me know. Okay, so I just want to say thanks for showing up, you guys. I know that you've got other stuff you could be doing. There's lots of good things on Netflix, so I'm really glad that you're joining me tonight. And I'm going to actually, what am I drinking? Let's get to that one. First 1 second here. Oh, let me get to my next slide. Okay, so that's me. So this picture is the epitome of who I am. I'm a seafood girl. I'm a coast girl. I'm a West Coast girl, and I'm an East Coast girl. You can't make me pick which one I love more because they're both amazing for their own ways. But I gotta say, East Coast seafood, there's just something about it. You can get that fresh Atlantic lobster that's just amazing. This picture of me was at an event in Halifax, actually. It was called Rendezvous Canada. And during that week, I had lobster 8 times in 5 days. 8 times in 5 days. So needless to say, my cholesterol is through the roof. Apparently that and mussels together. So, and that's me. So I'm Darcie Guarderas, Director of Business Development for Anderson Vacations. Love my job, love my company, love my country. So I'm glad to have you here. This evening, my beverage of choice is Alexander Keith's, of course. What else could it be? Which is a local beer. There's an amazing brew tour that you can go on in Halifax. It's probably like the best brew tour I think I've ever been on. It's really, really awesome. And one of the really cool things that I read about Alexander Keith's was a couple of years ago, they found a bottle of beer off the coast of Halifax, and it was like from the late 1800s, like 1890. And they opened this bottle of beer and they smelled it, and it smelled like cherries and rotten eggs, apparently. So they were like, should we drink it? And a couple of brave souls actually tasted this beer that was like 130 years old. And apparently it tasted exactly like it smelled. So they were pretty brave to try that. So this has actually been one of my favorite beers for a long time. And if you've been around for a while, you might remember that Alexander Keys had a contest a few years back where with buying a case of beer, you could actually win a lobster dinner. And my neighbor in Winnipeg actually won the lobster dinner, which I was very, very jealous. So that's super cool. Okay, I just want to make sure I go over my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything that I wanted to talk to about. One of the things that's been really cool and I really appreciate is the feedback after the webinars. Especially after the first one when we did Vancouver Island, feedback was unbelievable, and I truly appreciate that because that tells me what I'm doing right and what I can improve. My favorite remark I got this week was from someone who said, "Oh, I can't believe you canceled because my husband, who joins me for these all the time, was a travel agent's husband. He was so disappointed that we weren't doing one." So that means a lot to me too, that people are doing this as a family as well. So that's great. Getting into Nova Scotia, getting into Halifax, super easy. Of course, you've got all of your scheduled flights, Air Canada, WestJet, and so on, really easy. From the West Coast where I am on Vancouver Island, it's like going to Europe. It's so far, but it's so worthwhile. I try and break it up with a visit to Winnipeg because that's halfway there and that's where my family is. There's actually a ferry service into Halifax, in case you weren't aware of that. And you can take Via Rail, and lots of people actually take Via Rail into Halifax as well. I see a few more people joining, and I see someone who's having a cab sav. Well, cheers to you. I'm gonna have Clamato juice in my beer tonight, just to soften it a bit. Okay, so let me have a sip first. I've been thinking about that for quite a while. Delicious. Okay, so there's a map of our beautiful country. There's a little bit of the United States down below us to give you perspective as to where Nova Scotia is and the distance it is from all the different places. Like I mentioned, there's lots of ways to get there. Once you get there, it is not a huge place, but it's a great place to go. How much time should you spend there? I've had people say they've done it in a week, very quickly, done like the highlights in a week. I think you ought to do at least 10 days in Nova Scotia, my personal opinion. I've taken many FAMs there, and we did it in like 6 days, I think, and we just did the highlights. So I'm going to touch on some of the highlights. A lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about today is not going to go in order of the way it would be on a map, and some people are going to go, you're making me confused, but I'm touching on all the highlights because there's so much, and I only have 30 minutes, which I'm probably not going to get done in 30 minutes, by the way. So if you have to duck out, that's okay. So, oh yes, and you know what, there's a message from Sue. We are thinking of the Shearwater-based Cyclone helicopter members, CAF members. There's a rescue mission today. So there's a lot of sadness in the world, and I think it's good that we all come together because it's good to be together when you hear of these things. It's been a tough go for a lot of people. And on that note, I'm glad you brought that up, Sue. One thing I want to mention to you all, sorry you can see my mouse flying all over the place, is that Anderson Vacations is teamed. I know it is another travel agency and technically probably a competitor to some of you, but a travel agency approached us and asked us to do a contest with them, and we said absolutely. So we are offering up a trip to Yellowknife and the Aurora Borealis experience, and you can nominate first responders, so any essential workers that work in hospitals, that they can be doctors, nurses, they can be support staff, they can be, I know, it's amazing. And so we're working with this travel agency. We're so proud to be involved in that. So if you know someone who's a essential worker and you want to nominate them, please, you can go to our website. You can nominate them from there. If you don't follow me on Facebook, it's on there as well. So that's something to think about too. Okay, so these are the regions of Nova Scotia. So we're going to start in Halifax. We're going to go down a little bit down South Shore to like Peggy's Cove and things. We're going to touch a bit on Yarmouth and the Acadian shores, then a little teeny tiny bit on Annapolis because I don't have that much time. And then we're going to do Cape Breton, probably not in all that order actually, but to give you an idea of basically what we're doing. Excuse me. Okay, Halifax. Oh, I love Halifax. It's such a beautiful city for so many reasons. But the number one reason, and I always say this about every place, but the thing about Halifax is the people, for sure. I have lots and lots of very good friends who live in Halifax and the surrounding area. Doesn't matter if I don't see them for 6 months or a year. The moment you see them, you just feel this incredible connection with them. And I love that about there. The pubs, being able to go into a pub and have a beer and the locals start to talk to you. I don't think that happens everywhere. I don't think that happens in Vancouver. I don't think you go into a pub in Vancouver and people would just randomly talk to you like they do in Halifax. And that story just popped into my head. I remember the first time I was in Halifax, I was only there for one night the first time on my way to Sydney for a soccer tournament for my son. And we stopped overnight and we said, we can't stop in Halifax for like one night and not go to a pub. So of course we went down to the lower deck and we found this pub, we went in and there was a band playing and we were just like having the best time ever listening to the music. So we said, we're gonna stay for one beer. That's it, one beer. Then we had 2 beers. And then the music got better and better. Of course, we stayed till the end of the night. And at the end of the evening, when the band was winding up, I said to my husband, I really want to buy their CD so that when we drive tomorrow to Sydney, we can listen to the music and we can relive the evening on our way. So I said to him, do you have $20? So he gave me $20. And as I got up to go to the band, this lovely older couple who'd been sitting at the bar the whole night, much older than us, sipping on red wine, walked up to our table and handed me the CD. And I said, oh, how did you know? How could you possibly know that I was about to buy that CD? Did you see that I had $20 on? And they said, no. We were enjoying the evening so much. We wanted to give you a memento from the evening so you wouldn't forget it. I'm like, oh my God, it was amazing, truly amazing. That's the people in Halifax. So on the right-hand side, you'll see a picture of the Citadel. So it's, of course, in the center of the city. It's a fortress. It's a historic landmark. There's just so much to see. So I'm going to jump into some more slides that'll showcase. Okay, so we got to talk about lobster to start with because the title was Lobster and Oysters, and I love it so much. I have props all around me that you can't see. This is my chef hat for when I'm cooking. It's a little lobster hat that I like to wear. I also have my hat that I wore to the thing. I have my lobster bib, which I always wear when I'm eating lobster. But I'm actually really fascinated by it. And one of the things I learned when I was there recently, if you're a lobster person or you're not and you want to try it, if you're looking for lobster in a tank, if you're buying it and you're not in Nova Scotia, but you're at home and you want to try it, those long tentacly things that come off, when you're looking in the tank, if they don't have those 2 long things sticking out, then it's not fresh. If they're broken off. Interesting, I know. I just learned that when I was in Nova Scotia last time. So it's one of my favorite things in the whole entire world, and this is just one of many you might see in this presentation tonight. This is the biggest one ever. So again, this was at Rendezvous, and I had to climb over a fence to get to that. So yes, and oysters. Okay, I have a rule about oysters. So many people who try them the first time say, oh, they can't eat it. It's too slimy. It's too this, it's too that. But I have this rule, and it's an actual rule. I have 2 rules, actually. The first rule is you can't say you don't like raw oysters until you've had them 3 times. You have to try them at least 3 times. On the 3rd time, I promise you, you'll love them. And I actually have all the tools. I will quickly show you. This is just your average shucker here, just a normal average shucker. But once you get into it, you can actually get like the pro shucker like this that comes with the whole kit, the whole thing. And I even have a very special glove like this. And I only got the glove because my parents were getting worried about the fact that I was going to sever a tendon or something. But we're experts, our whole family are experts at it. So that's awesome. And you know what, I'm going to tell you right now. West Coast versus East Coast oysters, both are great, but I'm a fan of the East Coast Nova Scotia oysters. They're amazing. Okay, so let's talk a bit about some of the things that are going on in Halifax. So there's this super cool, there's all kinds of dining, lots of wonderful restaurants, but this restaurant really stood out for me, and I'm sure if you've been there before, you've heard of Five Fishermen. There's a little bit of history behind this restaurant. In the very beginning, way back when, it actually was a school. And then it turned into an art school. We're talking like long time ago. It turned into an art school, and then eventually it became a mortuary. So it happened to be a mortuary at the time that the Titanic went down. So it is actually the morgue for the Titanic, people from the Titanic. But it's only the morgue for the people from the Titanic who had a lot of money. A lot of money. The people who were actually on the Titanic, who were not up in first class, were actually buried at sea. And I found that very interesting. So when you go inside the restaurant, you can hear about some of the ghost stories. There's lots of ghost stories and things like that. So that was always fascinating to me. Okay. Oh, and then someone else mentioned there's an awesome, funky little bistro called Ginsberg Wong's. So make sure you check that place out if you're there. Okay, so there was a really tragic thing that happened, and maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. I heard about it before I went, but this is something that's really important because it's a huge part of the history of Halifax. And when you go there, it's really important to learn about this, to go find out about this. I actually learned about it on my foodie tour. There was an explosion way back when, and it was there was these two incredible giant boats in the harbor, and one was a French boat. I think the other one was Norwegian. I just want to make sure I have my facts correct. It was a Norwegian boat, and it was in the morning, and it was December 6th, and the date was 1917. So it's just over 100 years ago. And the one boat was filled with ammunition and explosives. And there was some miscommunications because of languages and so on, and they collided in the harbor. And when they collided in the harbor, there was a giant explosion, and people didn't know what was going on. So people were drawn to this fire that they saw in the harbor. They were all looking and drawn to this fire. And then there was this massive explosion. It was like the largest man-made explosion at that time ever. And it was so big that the anchor, the picture at the bottom is a part of an anchor that actually was blown over 3 kilometers away from the site of the explosion. And there's a couple things that were interesting. One, well, not interesting, it's very tragic and sad. Canadian National Institute for the Blind was actually created because there were so many people looking out the windows of their homes at the fire when the explosion went off. So it blinded over 1,000 people, which is horrible. And then all these people, and then to add fuel to the fire, after the explosion happened, it was winter time, and then it snowed, and everything was covered with all the snow, and they didn't have enough people to help them, take care of them. So it was amazing. People came from all around Canada and from the US, and a lot of people who weren't even doctors, who were training to be doctors, were brought up on the train to Halifax to help. And as a thank you for that, Halifax now every year since that time sends a Christmas tree down to Boston every year to thank them for their help during that that tragic time. There is actually, someone just mentioned that there's a really fun harbor hopper tour that's great, and you actually do get to go downtown where you'll hear all these historic stories. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. That's really great. So this is something that's really amazing. And there's the museum down there, and there's another museum. It's the Immigration Museum. That's so interesting because the majority of everyone who came to Canada comes through the immigration, came through there at some point. So you can actually go in there and look up your history of your family and things, which I think is just awesome. I mentioned before about the Halifax food tour. And if you've been on any of my other webinars, I love food tours. Last year, or a couple of years ago, I did 9 tours in 4 months. I love them, love them. Again, this is one of my favorite because a lot of it was seafood, but I don't know if you know this about Halifax, but they have these donairs, and like lots of places have donairs in the world, but these donairs are special because they actually have this this white sauce, and I think it's like that it's condensed milk. And so it's kind of sweet that goes with the meat and the onions and everything. It's absolutely amazing. We did have on this, we had the lobster rolls. You must have a lobster roll when you're there. But one of the cool things is we went to a cidery called Chain Yard, and it was a very cool concept because they actually had like Sunday afternoons where it was called Mom and Baby Sunday afternoon. So moms come with their baby strollers and come in and drink cider and have a little outing for themselves, which I thought was really neat. So this is highly recommend this. And what's really great about this particular foodie tour, and again, we include this in a lot of our independent itineraries, is that it's a whole bunch of storytelling, and the people who own this company are phenomenal storytellers. So, okay, oh, I lost my arrow. Oh, there we go. I'm gonna jump to the next slide. Okay, so once we get out of Halifax, and I probably missed something in Halifax, I'm sorry, because there's so many things to see and do there. We kind of head out of town towards Peggy's Cove, to the South Shore. It's really all about artisans, a lot of culture, little villages. It's very, very cute. Absolutely love it. So first stop is Peggy's Cove. These are my pictures, and they're from my cell phone. And I think one of the best things about the East Coast and Nova Scotia in particular, and of course Newfoundland too, is the colors. It's just beautiful, and it's so serene and peaceful, and oh, it's beautiful. So as you drive into Peggy's Cove, of course, you see this right away, and then once you get in, as you can see here, the lobsters, we went and had an incredible, this is my first lobster. No, this wasn't my first. This is one of my first lobsters I had on this particular trip. But this is where I learned, not only do you get to see them and touch them, that's where I learned about how to tell if they're fresh and what size and all that kind of thing, and why they have elastic bands on them and so on. And then that's my picture of Peggy's Cove as well, which is like the iconic lighthouse. You have to get your picture taken there. Something I found very, very interesting and frightening. There's all these black rocks down at the bottom, gigantic signs saying, please stay away, danger, you can die. This is really scary. And I think every time that I've been there, there's been people on these rocks, or even families on these rocks, and it just blows me away. But it's a really beautiful spot. And I see that Philip, you said yes, that's Pier 21. That's where the Immigration Museum is back in Halifax. So Peggy's Cove, you got to go there. It's a little quaint little village, and it's got this really great tourist shop, and the lobster there was phenomenal. So it's a must-see, great for photographs. From there, the Mahone Bay is just awesome. It's so beautiful. There's these 3 churches, and you have to go across from them and take this beautiful photo. It's like kind of the iconic photo that you have to take. It's a cute little place. I just want to refer to my notes really quick and just make sure I didn't miss anything. It is all about artists, artisans, and things. Colorful little town. I stopped at a brew pub called Salt Box, and I loved it. It was fantastic. We sat outside. I liked it so much that I bought the t-shirt and the hat. So that tells you I really liked it a lot, but it's really cute. It's on the way when you're heading out. And then from there, of course, you have to go to Lunenburg. Now look at this picture. Look at the colors. That is exactly the feeling you get when you arrive in Lunenburg. And for me, the best way to see it is they have these incredible walking tours. They're not expensive. It is a must do when you're in Lunenburg to do this walking tour, because when you walk by these houses, like there's a house called, I think it's called the Wedding Cake House. I always want to call it the Cupcake House. Wedding Cake House. It's pink. It's beautiful. You can look at these things and they're lovely and you can get a lovely photograph. But if you don't know what it is you're looking at, it's a totally different experience. So when you go with a guide, it's a fantastic way to see it. You can see all the sailboats. It's like very panoramic. The architecture there is incredible. Okay. So one of my favorite things about Lunenburg, there's a distillery there. It sounds like I drink a lot, but I like to see little hidden things that people don't want to just see the iconic things. They want to find out the cool, interesting, off the beaten path things. And there's a distillery there called Ironworks. And you can go in there and they do rum, they do, I think, vodka, they do all these different alcohols. But one thing that was really neat was they put some of their rum on boats. They put in a boat because the boat on the ocean, it rocks. And they have it in the barrels. And then as it rocks in the barrels, it creates some kind of special thing inside there. And then it creates these fabulous rum. Well, the year before I got there, the boat escaped and it went away and it got shipwrecked. So it was shipwrecked on the other side of this bay and they found it and everything. I thought this boat actually sunk. I've been telling everyone for years that the boat had sunk, but it apparently didn't sink. But the barrels of rum were in there, kind of went missing. So they actually named those barrels of rum shipwreck rum. So you had the special edition and I bought a couple of bottles of that, one for me and one for my dad. And I actually use it for my baking and stuff. Of course, the Bluenose is parked there, which everyone must see. The Bluenose, if you have the possibility to see that, you definitely want to. It's not always there, but it was there when we were there. And it's not the original. It's actually the replacement for the original. But there's some really cool stories behind it. Why is it called the Bluenose? Because that's the first thing I wanted to know. Why is it called the Bluenose? And there's a few stories. There's some blue potatoes that grow there, but the story I like is that it was very cold on the Bluenose. It's the schooner rig sailboat thing that was used for racing and fishing. And what I loved, the story I loved was that it was so cold that all the women, the wives, they knitted their husbands blue mittens. And every time that they got a runny nose, they would wipe their nose with the blue mitten. And then the ink from the mitten would go on their nose. And that's how that's why they called it the Bluenose. That's the story that I'm going to stick with. I think it's adorable. Okay. A few people I see have gone to the Bluenose. Awesome. Blue Rocks. You know what's funny about this one? I actually overlooked Blue Rocks, but Philip, one of my very good friends, he said, oh, one of his favorite places. I'm like, oh yeah, forgot. It's an adorable little fishing village. It's great for cycling, and a lot of cycling tours will go through Blue Rocks, little cute community artisans. It's absolutely lovely. I know that Philip's going to type me a little note because I know he loves this place. And then one of the other areas is Yarmouth and the Acadian shores. So let me just make sure I don't miss anything here. Okay, so this is really all about rugged landscapes. So very different. The dark skies, if you want to see stars, this is the place to see stars. It's absolutely beautiful. You're connecting with nature, hiking shores. It's very peaceful. It's very quiet. And it's really famous for Acadian kitchen parties. So I haven't done a kitchen party and I feel like I've missed out on something, really. So I think that that's my next time when I get there next time. One of the really neat things that I found coming out of here is you can do a lobster expedition. You or your clients can do a lobster expedition where you go for the entire day. So you are the fisherman. You go out, you catch the lobster, you cook the lobster, you wear the whole outfit. That's for me like the dream day, for sure. I would love to do that. So what else? There's a paddling excursions over there and so on. So that's a great area to go to as well. And if you're looking to just really disconnect and see some nature and stuff. And then also the Acadian history, of course. If you're a wine drinker like me, you would definitely want to hit up the Annapolis Valley. It's an agricultural area and the wine region, which is up on the North Shore near Wolfville, sort of on the way to Wolfville, I believe. I hope I'm correct on that. But this is really all about wines. And there's a really awesome foodie tour here as well, if you're looking for that. They're known for their crisp white wines. They're not as known for their reds, but I think they're working on that. But the whites, because it's such a seafood place, it's just a natural fit with the white wines and the seafood, but they have some fantastic ones. There was one, Benjamin Bridge, that was really well known, and it was rated really, really high, like really, really well known and delicious. There's also another one, I can't believe it, I think the Nova ones are really popular. I think we had those several times. There's also lots of festivals going on here, so it's absolutely beautiful. How are we doing for time? Oh, 4:26. Okay, so this Grand-Pré National Historic Site, the weirdest thing happened to me today. I was looking at information about this because I hadn't been to this spot, but I know that it's very significant in history and it's a must-see stop. And as I was researching at that very moment, one of my very close friends, who's also a travel agent, sent me a message at that very moment. She said, I know you're doing this webinar tonight. I can't be on it, but are you going to talk about Grand-Pré National Historic Site? Because I was there last year and it was absolutely monumental in the visit. It was just such a huge part of her visit because her husband is Acadian and he's from there. And he actually got to lead the Acadian parade because there was a celebration. It was a very tragic time way back when the Acadians were, some of them were killed, some of them were sent away, but a lot of people survived, and there was a celebration for that, the people who did survive, and her husband got to be at this celebration, so it was quite moving, quite amazing. It is a historic site. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. It is the epicenter of Acadian culture, which cannot be missed, and it is it really is the memorial to the tragic events that took place. So let me just jump to the next one. Okay, Cape Breton Island. Oh, it's beautiful. It's truly beautiful. Before I jump onto this one, I just want to see what people are saying about the wine. Someone did a red one. Oh, a red. Lydia had a red there called Four Skins when she was there in February, and she said it was amazing. So my theory about the reds, maybe they've got better reds than I know. And then there was one also amazing, Luckett Vineyard, someone mentioned, Lydia said. So Lydia, you like wine. You know your wines, my friend. Okay, so yes, you do. Let's jump to Cape Breton Island for a minute. I love Cape Breton Island. Again, the people, crazy, amazing, fun. It's beautiful. When I went, it was fall, okay? And I think that's what everyone thinks of for Cape Breton Island is fall. I'm gonna take a sip again, 1 second. So I went in fall, and the fall color. So let me skip to the next slide, because I think the next slide will prompt me to tell you a little bit more about it. Holy cow. I thought I knew what fall colors were, but there's nothing like what you see here. When you're looking at I've never seen it where there's like green, red, yellow, and orange all together. It almost looks like it's one tree. It looks like it's on fire. It crawls up the side of the hills, or I don't know if they're mountains or hills. The color is spectacular, and all you do, I think I almost got so obsessed with getting the perfect shot, the perfect photo, that I was so focused on that because everything was gorgeous and beautiful. And yes, Lydia, we should be friends. We need to work on that. There's a festival that goes on. I'm going to tell you about that in a second. But the fall colors. I know that someone's going to say, when is the best time to go see fall colors? And the prime week is between October 15th and October 22nd. But I took a fam group, not this year, but last year, and we went early November, and the colors were amazing. So it depends. It can change. Like the season changes a bit. They were spectacular when we were there. But so that's something that's kind of by chance. But the next thing that you definitely want to experience, the Celtic Colors Music Festival. Some people say Celtic, some people say Celtic. I called my very good friend in Nova Scotia, and she said Celtic, but she said you can say it either way. This event I knew nothing about before I went with the fam group. And if you're into music, you enjoy any kind of music. Doesn't matter if you're into bagpipes or fiddles or any of that kind of music, Celtic music, doesn't matter. Because I didn't know anything about any of that until I went. And I was so moved by the experience in every single place we went to. It doesn't matter where you go, what hotel you're staying at, what pub you go into, there is something incredible going on, which all winds up with the grand finale on the last night. And I have been to a million concerts in my life, and I've never like walked out of somewhere with my mouth hanging open going, that was the most incredible experience ever. And for those night owls, I think I'm a bit of a night owl, but as I get older, I'm not. For the people who want to stay up later, there's like an after party every night. So when the actual shows finish at maybe 10 or 11 o'clock at night, there's a bus that comes around. I think the bus comes around at 11:45 p.m. So I am asleep. But 11:45 p.m., this bus comes around to the hotels, picks people up and takes them to the after party. So all the musicians get to have fun and they party and they mix and mingle with all the guests and the locals and everything. It's absolutely awesome. If you have not done this, you should do this. If you're younger and it's not your jam, you should take your parents. You should tell your parents to go. You should arrange for them to go, because even if you're young, it's really incredible. I loved it. I don't know if I have this in the right order, but Alexander Graham Bell National Historic Site. This was really, really interesting. I'm not a museum girl, as you can probably tell. I'm more of a wine and dine kind of girl, but this was really, really interesting because of course, we all know Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, but that's really all I knew about him. I didn't know that he had a great part in working with the hearing impaired, because his wife was hearing impaired. I believe his mother was as well. So he came up with some really amazing solutions for that, and he kind of challenged what was being done at that time. And because of him, he actually was one of the first people who promoted and sort of introduced integration for people with hearing disabilities so that they could be integrated into regular schools and regular life. So it was really instrumental in that. So I learned a lot at this historic site, and I think that you would really, really enjoy it. So make sure that you add that to your list. Awesome. Okay, hiking, biking, outdoors activities, that's Nova Scotia for sure. There's so much to do and see there. So if you're an outdoor person, there are actual cycling tours that are arranged, and we work with some partners on that. But kayaking, there's absolutely nothing better than being on the water and, you know, being local. And then hiking, lots of trails that can all be predetermined before you go, so you know exactly where you're going. So lots of options for that. One of the things that I loved on Cape Breton Island was the Bedeck lobster dinner. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the lobster is pretty awesome, but I've never been anywhere where you have all you can eat mussels and clam chowder before you get your lobster. And the mussels come in this giant bucket, like this big, and you just keep ordering bucket after bucket. So you eat the bucket and you fill the other bucket with shells. This is why I have high cholesterol. It's the mussels and the lobsters. And the clam chowder. This was a really cool experience, and you must do this. And we actually include this in lots of our tours because you just can't go there and not do this experience. And I mean, if you're local, probably the locals go, well, that's like the cheesy whatever experience. But for me as a visitor, I loved it. It was fantastic. And the people are so friendly to talk to us. You also have to visit the fortress. Let me just pull this over here so I can see what I'm doing. The fortress of, is it Louisbourg or is it Louisbourg? It's Louisbourg, I think, with the S. I'm going to say Louisbourg. What's cool about this is that you actually, they're in period costumes, so it's like stepping back in time. If you've been to Heritage Park in Calgary, it made me think of that kind of experience, but lots of history. If you're there when they blow off the cannon, that's super cool. There's a guy who shoots the gun at a certain time. It's really neat. It's very windy there. When I was there, it's very windy, so you got to dress nice and warm, but if you're into history, you definitely want to visit this spot. Let me see what I have next. Okay, so we're getting towards, okay. So here's the recipe. This is actually classic Nova Scotia mussels. Now, I don't expect you to write this all down because it's a long one, but if you want to take a picture of it with your phone, if you want it, or you want me to email it to you afterwards, but I've actually made, and all the recipes that I always show you, honest to goodness, I make them. I'll email it to you, Lydia. I'll actually send it to you. So yes, this is a fantastic one. Mussels, when you buy mussels in a restaurant, anywhere else, you get a small little thing like this, but in Nova Scotia, you get a plate like this big for $11. So it's absolutely incredible. And they're large, they're fresh, they're absolutely amazing. So take the time to write that down. And I'm gonna just quickly look through and see if we had any questions whatsoever. Let's see. We've been covering most of them as we go along. If anyone has any questions, please type them in the chat box. In 2 weeks, we're gonna do another webinar or happy hour, and we're going to talk about Churchill, Manitoba. That was because Matthew, I can see him laughing. Matthew said, why are you talking about, and it's our 150th anniversary, is that right? Is that correct? Yes, thumbs up. So we're going to talk a bit about that as well, because I've actually been to Churchill in the summertime and I've been to Churchill in the wintertime, and I can tell you a bit about both of those. But hopefully that was a bit of an overview of Nova Scotia. Please, if you guys want to do something and be proactive to start to promote Canada, please ask me to help you, because I would love to do it, and we can do another little webinar like this. We can do like a live webinar like this, or if you go, you're not comfortable with it, or that you want to be in it, we can do a recorded one. I did one for an agent, a really awesome agent named Mackenzie, who Jenny got me started, and then Mackenzie started doing it, and we did it, and it's on YouTube. So if anyone wants to see what we can do, I can share those with you to give you some inspiration, because they're just awesome. And just so you know, I'm when I have time, believe it or not, I'm busier now with COVID. I'm busier now working 2 days a week. Well, I'm not really working 2 days a week than I ever have been before, because I love the fact that all of our travel agency partners, not all, but a lot, are really gearing up, right? Gearing up to get back to normal. It's coming, and you've got to be prepared. So I've been watching master classes every day on how to pivot when things like this happen. And so I love to see that a lot of you are pivoting with your businesses and getting prepared. And I'm going to be doing some recordings that are just neutral. They're not going to talk about any specific agency. They won't be just your agency or your agency. It'll be specific like we just did now, but on Nova Scotia. And if you want some of those videos and you want to put them on your website, then you can use those for inspiration as well. So I thank you so much. How much did we go over time? Oh, we only went over 7 minutes tonight, so we did pretty good. Thank you guys for joining me. If you have any comments or anything at all you want to leave in the chat box, or send me an email. My email it is on there. It's on there. So if you want to send me an email with any comments, concerns, questions, maybe I missed something, or if you want me to talk about another destination in Canada, let me know what you want, because I'd love to do that. The most important thing, thank you for showing up, you guys. It means the world to me, and your partnership to Anderson Vacations means the world to me. I'm looking forward to connecting with you soon. Thanks so much. Have a great week. Bye.